Rachel, are we recording? Oh,
There we are. Thank
there
you.
we are. All right. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate you asking about that. Because yes, recording is great. And I'm going to turn off all those little windows so that they don't interfere. Okay. First thing that you need to know is hopefully you all are well aware by now of where to find the delegate materials, but I've got it up here on a slide. I'm going to stick that in the chat as well. Just in case you need it during the course of this meeting, that is where all of the delegate materials are, all of the bios of the candidates, all of the motions, all of the bylaws amendments, all of the scenario proposals. It's all there on the delegate information website, which I hope you're all very familiar with already. I also want to explain that there are actually 3 different delegate roles, which you may have. So you might be a lead society delegate. If you're a lead society delegate, you have the overall responsibility for your society's delegation. And when we vote on bylaws amendments, the lead society delegate will cast the society's vote, because on bylaws amendments, we have to have a majority of both the delegates and the societies voting in favor. So you could be a lead society delegate. That would be one possible role you could have. Yes, Lee?
How do I know?
How do you know? So if you are a lead society delegate, and I can't remember whether you are or not, when there is a vote that requires the lead society delegate to vote, you'll actually get a second ballot that will be labeled for the lead society, that will be labeled as a society vote.
Well, what constitutes a lead society?
Lee, excuse me. This is Trish.
Yeah.
I think we decided that I would do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry that I didn't remember off the top of my head. All right. Yes, Eleanor.
Excuse me.
Somebody just said, excuse me, what? Okay. You said you provided the link to the delegate materials. I looked at it just a few minutes ago and I saw that it hadn't been updated. The agenda had not, proposed agenda had not been updated. The decision tree was still there and the link to the Bergen plan was still not there. When will that be updated?
Carolyn, when will that be updated?
The agenda will be sent to you, I'll post that in the chat tonight when I talk about it. And
Thank
hopefully tomorrow we'll get that posted on the website, but I will send it out to the delegate listserv tonight as well. As far as what you're asking about what's posted and what's not posted, I'll have to double check. But I have seen that the links that are on the agenda, the amended agenda, are live, working, and current. So thanks for asking.
All right. Thank you so much, Eleanor. Okay. Next up, another kind of delegate you might be is a society delegate. And if you're a society delegate, you'll be casting 1 or more votes for your society. The reason I say 1 or more is that it's possible that you could have been assigned to vote more than once for your society. For example, one of the societies has their lead delegate holding 3 of the votes that their particular society has, right? Another society has their lead delegate holding all of the votes, right? And so that person then, when they vote, they get more weight in the voting system if they have more votes assigned to them. But don't worry, you only have to fill out 1 ballot if you're in that situation. You don't have to fill out 5 ballots if you've got 5 votes. Society delegates can vote on all issues that are before the assembly. The third kind of delegate that you might be is what I'm going to call other delegates. Sometimes we call this a categorical delegate. This is a delegate who is a delegate by virtue of some kind of position that they hold. So all of our certified clergy leaders are allowed to vote. All of our AEU board members are allowed to vote. All of our past presidents are allowed to vote. These people aren't allowed to vote in the board and officer elections. Rachel, if you have a moment, could you check for people whose microphones might be open, just because it's a little distracting? Thank you so much. So anyway, so the categorical delegates or other delegates can't vote in these AEU board and officer elections, but they can vote on all the other matters of business. So they can vote on the budget, they can vote on the scenarios, they can vote on the bylaws amendments. They just can't vote in the board and officer election. And all of that is laid out in our bylaws. All right. Any questions about that? Yes, Perry.
I just want to clarify, a person who is both a society delegate and an AEU board member, for example, would have 2 votes on matters other than the board and officer elections, but would still have 1 vote on those elections.
That's exactly right. So they don't get to, so if they're a society delegate and an AEU board member, they don't get any extra votes on the AEU board and officer elections, but they do have more, have the possibility to have more votes on the other matters of business. Yes, Fred.
Yeah, quick question. Would it be possible to see a list of all the delegates and who is what type and have that posted on our website? That sounds complicated, but it would be really helpful. So we would know how many total delegates there are. When, you know, the vote counts are total, we know, you know, who has a majority, et cetera.
So that list has been emailed out to the presidents. And I think it was also emailed out to the board. It should not be posted on the website because it contains everybody's email addresses. But anyway, the list that was shared with the presidents does contain the names, the email addresses, and then it says how many votes they get in each of these categories. So if you have any questions, perhaps consult the president of the society that you're a member of. They should have access to this list.
Do you know when that list was sent out?
Rachel, when did that list get sent out?
I'll have to look it up exactly.
Okay, I'm sure Rachel will get back to us later in the meeting.
I haven't seen it, so I'll check. Okay,
awesome. Thank you. All right, moving along. The AEU bylaws specify that we use Robert's Rules of Order in our meetings unless there are other rules that have been passed. We have a long tradition of using consensus rules in our in-person assemblies. However, because of the impracticality of the consensus rules for the virtual meetings, particularly due to different people having different amounts of votes and all this kind of stuff, the board passed some special rules for the 2023 assembly, which are very similar to the rules that were used in 2022 and 2021. There are some relatively minor differences, and these are linked on the delegate materials website, so you can read up on what they are. And I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. They cover, like, how does the discussion happen during the meeting? How does the voting happen? Those kinds of details. So some of these things we're going to be talking about tonight. All right. Okay, moving on to voting procedures. So no amendments are going to be accepted from the floor to any of the matters of business. As you should have been informed, all amendments must have been submitted by July 20th. So that deadline has already passed. We have a number of amendments. You know, things have definitely happened. There will be several ballots used during the course of the meeting. In past years, we've tried to minimize the number of ballots that you needed to use because in 2020, using a lot of ballots caused a lot of confusion. This year, there are some matters of business where the outcome of one matter of business determines the result of another, or determines what we have to do later in the meeting, or what you'll be voting on later in the meeting. And therefore, we have to use more than one ballot. This means that you'll need to be able to switch in between your Zoom screen and your email to find your ballots at the appropriate time. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that skill later during the course of this meeting. You know, I know this is going to be more complicated. I hope that it will be clear when you look at the agenda why it's necessary. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible and still respect the will of the assembly in, you know, making these decisions in real time when needed. Okay, because of that, we're going to have results for some of the votes during the course of the meeting. These should be considered unofficial until after the voting support team, that's me, Chris Kamen, and Bill All, has an opportunity to certify them, which we can't do until after the conclusion of the meeting, right? We're too busy during the meeting helping people vote and, you know, putting up new ballots to be able to think through, okay, are these results correct? Have we considered all of the issues? Are we ready to certify them? We're going to need a few minutes to certify them. So as I said, you know, consider the results unofficial, but as accurate as possible, right? Hopefully the results will be sufficiently unambiguous during the course of the meeting that there wouldn't be a problem if we discovered that, you know, one vote here or there might make a difference in terms of the outcome. The reason why we need to certify the vote is because there are some situations that can't be fully automated and require human oversight. To give an example from last year's assembly, last year, we needed to be able to determine who would get the 1-year term of office for the board election and who would get the 3-year term of office for the board election. And the voting support team that we had last year had to do some calculations in order to figure that out because the automated system didn't have the answer. So that's an example of the kind of thing that could require some human oversight. We will, of course, report on anything we do that is like that to make sure you understand why we couldn't just use the result of the voting system. And this step is also necessary to address any problems or questions that may arise, like, did we actually do this right? That kind of question. So that would be why there needs to be time for certification. Are there any questions about that? Yes, Abby.
How much would it help to have extra people helping during the assembly?
That's a great question. I mean, the board has authorized the particular individuals who are on the voting support team to do this work. And so I'm not sure whether we could accept additional help at this time. But, you know, we could talk about it afterwards. Bill and Chris and I could talk about it afterwards and determine if it would be helpful and if we think we could accept additional help. Does that answer the question?
It does, and that was an offer.
I thought that might be an offer. Yeah, thanks, Abby. All right. You may also want to know when the voting is going to end. In past years, we've had a specific time when voting ended, which was typically 10 p.m. Eastern time after the end of the assembly, which was quite a few hours after the end of the meeting. We'll be doing that a little bit differently this year. We're going to end the voting on some items at the end of the voting period for that item on the agenda. So if it says on the agenda that we're going to vote on the scenario resolutions, and then we're going to have a 10-minute voting period, after the end of that voting period, we will end the vote on that particular issue. It won't be possible to submit any more ballots. That 10-minute period is flexible in that it's possible that if people are having a lot of trouble voting, we might need to extend that time. The goal of that time is to provide time for people to vote. So if people are having technical issues, they will be able to let us know. We anticipate that we'll have a breakout room in the Zoom meeting for people who are having trouble with some aspect of the voting, that they can come and talk to us about whatever that issue might be. And we do anticipate also providing a phone number so that you could call one of the members of the voting support team about any problems that you might be having with voting. So some of the items will end at the end of the voting period for that particular item. The voting on the final ballots will end at the conclusion of the business meeting, or as soon as all of the delegates who were present at the meeting have had any problems or questions they'd have with voting answered. So if you remember from previous years, those of you who were delegates before, the voting support folks stuck around after the meeting and addressed any questions and problems that people were having until everyone was satisfied that they had had a fair opportunity to vote. And we plan to do that again this year. Yes, Lee.
When is technically the end of the business meeting? Like, when is this thing over on Saturday?
So Carolyn, what is your latest estimate on the end of the business meeting?
I knew you were going to pass that back to me. Thank you. The agenda has times assigned to, not actual clock times, but minutes assigned to each item on the agenda. It's 4 pages long, and if I can still add, it's at least 3 hours and 15 minutes long, with the possible addition of another 45. So if we use every minute that is assigned to a particular item, it could be up to 4 hours.
So it starts at 10, right? The
Starts
meeting-
at 11 Eastern, 10 Central, yes. And the middle of the night for the West Coast, right? And so
we should be out of there by 4, maybe?
I hope.
Okay.
I mean,
And-
we'll be as fast, we're going to be as fast and efficient as possible, but we did, in order to give you the allotted, in order to make sure that you had enough time to speak, to debate, to discuss, we put these time limits in there from the voting process rules, and it adds up.
Yeah, and a comment that I have about that, and Abby, I'll recognize you in just a moment, is that part of the reason why Carolyn can't figure out how long exactly it's going to take, right, is it's not because Carolyn is incompetent. It's because there are times where, for example, Carolyn will be asking, the Brooklyn Society has accepted friendly amendments to their proposal. Are there any objections to allowing the Brooklyn Society to accept these friendly amendments? And if people object to allowing the friendly amendments, then we have to have a discussion about whether it's okay for those amendments to be accepted, right? Whereas if people do not object, then that time is not needed.
I thought we weren't allowed to have amendments.
Well, the amendments that have already been received. Yeah. All right. Yes, Abby.
Yeah, so contemplating a 4-hour meeting makes me wonder if there will be a break.
So that's a great question. There will definitely be breaks whenever there are these voting breaks, right? So, so those are definitely breaks that will exist. I have no opinion about other breaks. Carolyn, do you have any thoughts on other breaks?
We just ran it through as fast as, and just consistently, but there are 3 or 4 10-minute breaks where people will be voting. if we could conceivably schedule a break, but partly, oh dear, Abby, we have, we
Yeah,
do
no, I hear what you're
maintain a
saying,
quorum
Carolyn.
for that
Carolyn,
period
the
of
message,
time.
the
So-
message I'm taking from what you say is stock up on food and water and everything. Just have it there. Don't leave, don't take time to, make the sandwich in the morning. So you just have it.
Yeah, bring a bag lunch would be great. Just, walking across the room and having your thermos with you is a good idea. There will be some breaks where you could sneak away for a body break, but really it's a marathon. It's a very complicated year.
Hang on a second. So Rachel commented in the chat that adding anyone to the voting support team would violate the board vote, and she doesn't think the voting support team can make that decision. So I don't think we can either. But I was trying to avoid having to make a decision myself without consulting with the other members of the voting support team and other relevant stakeholders in the middle of this meeting. So I definitely was not suggesting that I thought we did have that authority. Thanks, Rachel, for bringing that up. Yes, Anya.
I just wanted to clarify what time the meeting starts. Was that 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific
No.
Coast?
It starts at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was confused because I thought Carolyn said it starts in the middle of the night on the West Coast. So I was panicked there for a moment that I would have to get up in the middle of the night. But thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, and also Elizabeth Burns in the chat wants to know the date of the AEU Assembly. It is this Saturday, I think that's the 29th of July. All right, moving right along. I think we've talked about when the voting is going to end. How will I find out the results? So the voting support team will write a report containing the results of all votes taken at the assembly. This type of report may be familiar to you from previous years. If you are curious about what that report might look like, you can look at last year or the year before's delegate website, and there should be a similar report available. The report will contain links to the results from the Election Buddy software, so you can see the results for yourself in that software. It will also contain explanations of any occasions where the Election Buddy system's reporting required further analysis to comply with our bylaws. And if there are any irregularities reported in the Election Buddy system, they'll be explained in the report. An example of an irregularity would be if we extended the time on a particular vote. Like if we said it was going to end at 4, we plugged it into the system as ending at 4, and then we decided that actually it needed to keep going on till 4:30 because not everybody who said they wanted to vote was done voting. That would be an irregularity that we would then have to account for and explain. And that irregularity would also be reported to you in the Election Buddy system. That report will be emailed to all the delegates and made available on the delegate information website. Just so you know, there was a private chat that went on between me and Rachel just now in the chat. Rachel and I misunderstood. I thought that the list of delegates had gotten sent out to the President's Council. I think I got asked whether I thought that was a good idea. I thought it was a good idea. And I thought that whoever it was who asked me, I don't know if it was Carolyn, I don't know if it was Rachel, I thought that it had been done because I knew that that list was then available to people, but it may not have been done. So it would delight me if Rachel were to send it out to the delegate or to the President's Council, since that seems valuable and useful information for the presidents to have. Does anybody have any concerns about that? Okay. When will the report be made available? It will be made available when we are done writing it, which I personally will be leaving for summer camp the day after. So I will be staying up late working on the report. unless Chris and Bill are not able to work with me on that report until it is finished on Saturday night, I would expect it to be done on Saturday night. Chris and Bill, do you have any input on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm available. I hope it doesn't go too long into the night because my brain starts shutting down after 10 p.m. So,
Plans.
yeah.
Let us all hope that it does not take us 6 hours to write a report. Bill, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, we do have plans for Saturday night, but I mean, most of this is coming out of the election buddy. I don't know if this is going to take all that much time anyhow. Am I correct in my thinking?
It shouldn't take that long unless some kind of questions come up, unless, if there are some kinds of problems that come up, then that might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and by the way, I apologize for not introducing Chris and Bill at the beginning of this meeting. I was so excited to get started explaining this stuff that I forgot to introduce them. So now that Chris and Bill have just spoken, they are the other members of our voting support team. Did either of you have anything you wanted to say?
You got it.
You got it.
All right. Thank you. And Sarah Morris in the chat writes that the list of delegates was sent to the President's Council by Trang Duong, the co-chair of the President's Council, on July 18th. Great. So it did get sent out. That's wonderful. Yeah, the assembly starts at 11 a.m. East Coast time, just to finish clarifying that. All right. Okay. Ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is something that some folks have concerns about. It can be a little complicated. It can feel hard to understand. So, like I did in previous years, I want to make sure to explain it to you carefully. This year, I've included an example. So ranked choice voting is going to be used for any issues where there are multiple options for the same item of business. This could include, this definitely includes the scenario resolutions, right? But it could also include other issues. It definitely includes the board members, although since the directors are running unopposed, there are exactly the number of directors as there are slots for directors. The fact that we're required by our bylaws to use ranked voting for them doesn't actually affect anything about the outcome. So you can rank them however you want. It won't affect what their term of office is or who gets elected. It's also possible that we may discover during the meeting that we have to use ranked choice voting for some other matter of business. This would happen if someone objected to allowing an amendment to a bylaws amendment, for example. If someone objected to the amendments that have been received to the bylaws amendments, then we'd have to include both the original version of that draft of that proposed bylaws amendment, and we would have to include the amended version, and you would be expected to rank them or to vote, no, I don't like any of these options. So those are the things on which you would be asked to do ranked choice voting. When you are doing ranked choice voting, you should rank all the options that are acceptable to you, and you should not rank the options that are not acceptable to you. So if there are options that you think are terrible, right, you should not rank them. The reason is because if you rank something that you don't like, and all of the things that you liked better get are less popular with other people, so they get excluded from the ranked choice analysis, then what happens is that all of a sudden, the thing you didn't like that you ranked last, right, winds up being the thing that you are considered to be supporting. in the ranked analysis. So it's important to understand that you should only rank the options that are actually acceptable to you, and you should not rank the options that are not acceptable to you. This information will be on your ballot as well, right in front of the item that you're voting on. So, but, we have this natural inclination when we are faced with a list of things that we can rank to rank all of them. And so I want to make a special point to let you know not to rank the things that you think would be awful choices. Okay, if you don't rank something, that's the same as voting against it, right? If you don't include it in the ranking, then you're saying, nope, don't like this. There is also on every ranked ballot, other than the ballots for the directors, an option to vote for no change, to keep things the way they are now. Typically, the reason you would need that is if you didn't want to vote affirmatively for any of the options. Because if you don't want to vote affirmatively for any of the options, the only way your vote can be counted is to vote for no change. This is not an option that you particularly need if you're actually going to rank some of the other options, because in that case, the ones you didn't vote that you didn't rank would be sort of equivalent to the place where you'd be voting for no change. The reason for that is because no measure on our agenda can pass if it doesn't reach the threshold required by the bylaws for affirmative votes. So most of these matters of business, I think all of the ones that are on this agenda that are not related to directors and officers require a majority of people to vote affirmatively for them. That means a majority of people have to have ranked whatever that option is, or in a yes/no vote have to have voted yes. And therefore, it's possible that that if you, anyway, I'll explain more about that later. I'm going to stop talking about it. All right, let me go through an example, and it will hopefully become more clear to you. Okay, here's an example. We're going to choose food for a party. So here's your scenario. For years, an organization's summer party has always served pizza, and you're now trying to decide whether to serve something different this year. The members of your planning committee suggested some new options. They thought, well, we could have deli sandwiches, or we could have mutton paneer, or we could have fried chicken. Now, because this is not a real scenario, and I'm just giving you an example, you're not allowed to compromise and offer some of each, right? Your budget won't allow it. So the members of your organization are being asked to rank their choices. What do they think we should eat at our summer party? And the members are told that if none of the options get chosen, that is, none of the options get ranked by at least half the members, then we're just going to stick with the current situation, which is pizza. They're also told that they can rank no change if they want to stick with pizza. So that's our scenario. Now, the first person in our membership, we have only 5 members because it's an example. Rajesh, he's a vegetarian, so fried chicken, not acceptable to him. So he ranks the choices as follows. He chooses mutton paneer first, deli sandwiches second, because he assumes that there are going to be some vegetarian sandwiches, and he ranks no change third. It's not actually essential that he rank no change third. He could just leave it blank. He could leave his third choice blank. So anyway, he's really hoping for mutton paneer. He doesn't rank the fried chicken at all, because he likes the current situation, pizza, better than he likes fried chicken, obviously, since he's a vegetarian. Okay, our next person, Amara. Amara, she's lactose intolerant, so she doesn't like mutton paneer, and she also doesn't like the current situation, which is pizza. For her to express that pizza isn't acceptable to her and that Mater Paneer is not acceptable to her, her best option is to rank as many of the other options as possible. There's no way for her to just say, I don't like pizza, right? She has to rank all the other options that are acceptable to her to express that. So she ranks fried chicken first, and she ranks deli sandwiches second. She doesn't really like deli sandwiches. Like she isn't excited about them, but because they're better than pizza, she makes it a special point to rank them in order to try to avoid having the group decide to stick with the same old thing. So this is what I mean by choosing an option that's acceptable to you, even if you don't love it. Third person, Judy. Judy doesn't have any food restrictions. She eats everything. All the options are acceptable to her. So she just ranks them in the order of her preference. Deli sandwiches first, Mater Paneer second, fried chicken third, and she decides to rank no change fourth, but she doesn't have to, right? If she hadn't ranked no change at all, it wouldn't really make any difference in the outcome. David is contrary, and he doesn't agree with the idea of changing the food that's served at the party at all. He wants to stick with pizza. So he ranks no change first, and he doesn't rank any of the other options. The reason he doesn't rank any of the other options is because he thinks they're all terrible, and he wants to make sure that his vote never counts toward helping any of the other options over that 50% threshold that's required to win the vote, right? So that's why he doesn't rank them. And then finally, our fifth person, Sam. Sam has a problem with the voting system because they like pizza best, but they also have an opinion about some of the other options being better than the others. They don't really want their vote to ever count in favor of those other options, but they decide to rank some of them anyway. And the problem Sam has is that it's possible that their vote could get counted as affirmative votes for something like Mater Paneer, even though they don't like Mater Paneer very much. So they're having trouble figuring out how to vote. So Sam ranks no change first, and then ranks Mater Paneer second and fried chicken third. If Sam really wanted to make sure that their vote never counted in favor of Mater Paneer or fried chicken, they should just not rank those things at all. They're sure that they don't like deli sandwiches. They're absolutely certain, so they don't rank those at all. Okay, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's really important that you have a clear understanding of how this works. So now I've got a table here with our votes, right? We've got our 5 members and how they ranked the different options. The way that the ranked voting is going to work is that in the first round, none of these options has more than 50% of the number 1 rank votes. So we're looking only at the number 1 rank votes. So fried chicken, or sorry, no change has 2 out of the 5 votes, right? But number 1 rank votes, but it doesn't have 3, and that's how many it would need. So therefore, we need to eliminate the least popular option, which in this case is fried chicken. I'm oversimplifying this a little bit. Please don't, for the sake of making this clear. So the fried chicken gets eliminated because it's the least popular option. What happens next is that Amara had fried chicken as her first choice. Her first choice gets moved over to deli sandwiches because that's her second choice. And since fried chicken got eliminated, her second choice becomes her first choice. So now we've got deli sandwiches having 2 first place votes and no change having 2 first place votes. Neither of these options has yet exceeded the 50% threshold, which means that we have to eliminate another option that's less popular. So we wind up eliminating Mater Paneer because it's the least popular of the remaining options. Then in our third round, Rajesh's vote for Mater Paneer, his number 1 rank vote, gets dropped, and we look at his second choice vote for deli sandwiches, and we assign first choice to deli sandwiches, since Mater Paneer is no longer an option. That was his second choice. Now deli sandwiches has Rajesh, Amara, and Judy's first place vote. So it wins because it has more than 50% of the first place votes. David and Sam are out of luck. Their desire for no change got outvoted by Rajesh, Amara, and Judy, who liked a variety of options, but in the end were able to settle on deli sandwiches. Okay, so are there any questions about this example? Yes, John.
I was wondering if you could go back a step and explain how it was that I think it was that Mater Paneer won out over no change.
Sure. Actually, it's right here where Mater Paneer wins out over no change. So Mater Paneer gets eliminated because it is the least popular of the remaining options at this point. And Rajesh's number 1 rank vote had been assigned to Mater Paneer because his vote is no longer valid, right? Mater Paneer is no longer in the calculation. So therefore, we look for Rajesh's second choice and assign it a number 1 rank.
Sonia?
And that turns out to be deli sandwiches.
Yeah, that the last 2 sentences I understood. It was the first sentence when you said that Mater Paneer was less popular. How was that determined?
Okay, so this is the part where I oversimplified a little bit, but in this particular case, Mater Paneer is less popular because deli sandwiches already has 2 number 1 rank votes, no change already has 2 number 1 rank votes, and Mater Paneer has only 1 number 1 rank vote, and therefore it's less popular because it has fewer number 1 rank votes.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, we're going to move along. Of course, if any of you have any questions about this later, I will be happy to answer them. There's also a link in the voting procedures, the discussion and voting procedures document, to an explanation of this system that I think you may find helpful. I think there's even a video. Yeah, Chris.
I just wanted to point out that the rounds that you showed us are not done by the voting team. This is done by the software. The software is what's working to find the solution that's 50% plus 1. So we're not manipulating the system at this point. We're just watching it play out with the election buddy voting system.
Thank you, Chris. That is an outstanding point. And we will actually look at that a little bit later when we do a test vote, which is coming up in mere moments. Then you'll all be able to see how the system comes to that conclusion. But yes, thank you so much, Chris, for pointing out that it's not us doing this math. All right. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to give a little brief explanation about how to switch between programs on your computer, because some delegates have had trouble with that before. In this particular election, being able to switch relatively efficiently between Zoom, a web browser, and your email is pretty important, because you're going to be switching back and forth between those things in order to vote. So it's important that you practice this skill before the meeting on Saturday if you have any doubts about your ability to do it. If you're the kind of person who finds yourself saying, oh no, I've lost my Zoom window, I have no idea how to get it back, you're the person who should be practicing this ahead of time. So to give a little bit of information about what you should be looking for, if you're using a Macintosh or a PC, there's going to be a dock or a taskbar that's going to be either at the bottom of your screen or on the side of your screen that contains little icons for all of the programs that are running on your computer at the present time. And it also probably has some icons for programs you use frequently. You should familiarize yourself with the icons for the Zoom program, for your web browser, and for whatever it is you're using to read your email, whether you're using a separate program for that or whether you're doing that in a web browser. Because you'll need to go to your dock or your taskbar to click on Zoom to get back to Zoom, and to click on your web browser, and then maybe on your email program to switch back and forth between those. Sometimes your dock or your taskbar might disappear depending on the settings of your computer. And in that case, if you know where it usually is, like if it's usually at the bottom or it's usually at the side, you can move your mouse over to where it usually appears, and it should reappear and let you look at the icons and click on the one that you need. And Chris, I'm wondering if you have any additional insights into this, or additional things you think we ought to say about that?
No, I don't. I can't think of anything to add to it. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Perry.
So when I have Zoom open, my Zoom window occupies the whole screen. Now, if anybody else is in that situation and is wondering where they're going to find this taskbar or dock that you're referring to, the way I would get to it is I would do an Alt tab on my PC, and then I'm out of the Zoom window and I'm at the screen that has all of those things visible.
Thank you, Perry. That's a helpful piece of advice, to use the Alt tab on a PC. Another thing you can do is try pressing the Escape key, because the Escape key can cause something that's taking up the whole screen to stop taking up the whole screen. Yes, Jan. You're muted.
Please unmute Jan.
Sorry.
There we go.
I'm on a PC. The view symbol is up in the upper right-hand corner. And if you click on that at the bottom, you'll see full screen or exit full screen. If you exit full screen, the taskbar at the bottom will show up.
Thank you, Jan, for that helpful tip. I really appreciate it. Judy.
So obviously we cannot offer assistance during the actual voting, but is there some way that those of us who would like to help other folks practice beforehand, is there some way we can set up a, I don't know, either breakout rooms or an opportunity to help folks who need some support with this? I'm offering.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. That's a great question. So if there is anybody who thinks that they would like to have some additional help with this particular task, maybe it would be possible for you to contact me, Chris Kamen, or Bill All to ask for that help. And then we can set up, if we discover that there is a demand for that, then we can set up a session. I realize that'll have to happen like tomorrow. So you would need to contact us right away. And Chris, could you put the email addresses of the three of us in the chat so that people will have them?
Sure, will do.
Thank you so much, Chris. Okay. And then next up, yes, Nick.
What I do in that kind of situation is have both up at the same time. I adjust the windows so that they don't occupy the whole screen. And then I just have I have both of them up at the same time, but not in the same space on the window. So I can just click from one to the other as I need to.
Right.
I don't know if, I thought that was what everybody did, but I guess it's not.
Yeah, I think sometimes what happens, Nick, is that For example, the problem we were just talking about where Zoom winds up taking up your entire screen and you don't know how to stop that from happening. I think that's the kind of situation that people may be encountering. And I really appreciate everybody's tips about how to avoid
Yeah,
that, because
impressed.
yeah,
It's
obviously
great
it's
taste.
ideal if you can size your windows to not take up the whole screen. Yep. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so I also wanted to mention that on an iPad or iPhone, if you're using one of those kinds of devices to switch between applications, I do have some directions about that available, which I will also put into the chat. It basically involves dragging up from the bottom of the screen and then holding in the middle of the screen until you see a bunch of different windows appear. And then you should be able to scroll back and forth, find the one you want, and tap on it to open it. There was also a question in the chat about how to make that happen with Android devices, how to switch between applications with Android devices. And I am afraid that I do not know. Is there anyone here who does know how to switch between windows in an Android device?
There is usually in the lower left-hand portion of your screen, somehow or other at the bottom, 3 vertical lines that when you tap on it will show you all of the currently opened applications. And you should be able to scroll left to right and choose the one that you want.
Great. Thank you, Judy. So you're saying that in the lower left-hand corner, there should be like an icon that you can click on to bring up all the different programs that you currently have running, similar to what I was describing on the iPhone?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
great. Thank you, Judy, for helping out with that. Really appreciate it. All right. So, oh, look, we have not turned off drawing on the screen. I see that someone has drawn on the screen. That's funny. All right, so the next thing I wanted to do was to let you do a practice vote so that you would all be able to see how the voting will work. Is there anyone here who is not a delegate who would like to be included in this practice vote? You know, it's a practice vote. Anyone could be included. It's not a problem. Anybody? Okay, great. So I have preloaded all of the delegates into this practice vote. And I'm just going to double check all the details before I send it out. Of course, there are people who are not present here in the room who will receive this, and hopefully the text I included in the email about that, about why they shouldn't worry about it, is clear enough. All right, I'm going to verify our election details. Okay, I'm going to confirm our terms and conditions. All right, so you should now, within the next minute or two, receive an email that contains a link for you to vote. The subject line of that email will be test vote, American Ethical Union. And then after that, it will say delegate training practice vote. So go ahead and go look for that in your email.
Should we be voting?
Yes, you should go ahead and vote. And sorry, I was distracted because I've been asked to add a voter. So I am adding a voter. Just so you know, we reserve a certain number of like additional blank slots that we can add voters to, just in case we discover that an actually authorized voter somehow got left off the list. And I have found that there is a voter that whose ballot was undeliverable. So I'm going to work to find out who that was and why, but I won't be able to do that right now. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, it's not opening a link. What is wrong? I see something about copying and pasting. So this is to vote, visit the following. That's the one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not getting there.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find my own ballot so that I can show what it looks like on the screen. I'm going to stop sharing this screen because you don't need this.
Oh, I think I've got it. Okay, so I copied and pasted the link onto the browser and I got there that way.
And just, I'm going to show what my screen looks like so that you can see what yours should look like. You should have an email that looks something like this, where it says test vote, American Ethical Union, delegate training practice vote. There's a bunch of stuff, and then to vote, visit, and there's a link and you can click on it. Yes, Dror, you had a question.
I'm able to vote number one a couple of times. That's really going to mess it up, isn't it? Or is it? I mean, would that be, is that a mistake? Is it going to, as when I submit, is it going to say you can't do that?
So you shouldn't be able to do that. Let me know if you discover that you can do that, because
I can. I mean, I haven't submitted, but
right. I mean, when you try to submit it, if it doesn't tell you it's an error, let me know.
Yes, I can
Okay,
do that.
okay, it does say.
I can do number one several times.
But it does say errors on your ballot must be corrected. You got
Oh,
me.
mine didn't.
You were able to vote more than one number one choice.
No,
and it-
but I could not submit that.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Okay,
I
great.
guess. Okay.
Zia?
I just haven't been able to find any of that stuff to do. I'm looking for the dock or the taskbar, and I don't know where it is on my screen. So how do I get back to my email? I know I got the email, but I haven't bring it up on the screen. So what do I do?
Okay, so what program do you normally read your email in? Like, how do you normally do that?
What program? I honestly don't know the names of these programs. I click on mail and that comes up.
Okay.
So shall I click on mail?
Yeah, if you need to find your email, try clicking on mail again.
Yeah.
And John McCormick, did you eventually receive the email?
I have the email now on my screen. So to vote, I just click on the election button.
You just click on where it says in the email, to vote, visit : and then there's a link, secure.electionbuddy.com, and then there's a sequence of letters and numbers.
I have that. So if I click on that, okay, I found the election buddy page. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm listening to you.
Yeah, so once I've done the voting, then I need to get back to Zoom. That's really all I
Right. If so, once you've seen the confirmation screen that says that there should be a confirmation screen that says thank you, submitted at a particular time, a confirmation code. Once you see that, then you can switch back to Zoom. Chris, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was wanting to say that it sounds like this is not a problem tonight. Hopefully won't be on Saturday, but the email I put in the chat where the email comes from. It comes from invitations@email.electionbuddy.com. It says the American Ethical Union, but that's who it's from. So if any of you have filters on your computers to filter out junk email, or you don't see an email from on Saturday, make sure you check your junk mail, social mail, anything else that like Gmail automatically filters stuff out. So if you don't see the ballot, be sure you check those places to see if it landed there.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful insight. All right. Is there anyone here who is still working on voting?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. I want to wait for everybody to have a chance to get through it before we close the voting on this and look at what the results are going to look like. Since after all, the point of doing this right now is to practice. All right, and it looks like Fred has a question.
Yeah, I looked at the weather. It looks like it's going to be pretty good here on Saturday, but it may not be the case everywhere. And if there's a thunderstorm or something happens where your internet gets knocked out, what are the alternatives? How do we deal with that?
That's a great point. So, you know, that would be, if that were a widespread problem, that might be a reason why the assembly would decide to postpone some of these votes, right? I mean, we might decide we needed to delay them if there were a widespread problem like that. If it's just an isolated problem, like I said, we will have published a phone number that you could call ahead of time. It is possible for the folks who would be answering the phone to actually cast your ballot for you. That's obviously not the most desirable result. We would only do that if you asked us to, right? But that is a possibility if for some reason your computer is out of service.
What time did the thing did you send out the trial vote? Because I got mine on mine, but Betty didn't get hers on her her email yet.
Okay.
My latest thing is 7:02.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the 702.
That's the latest email that came through on my computer. Did you press the check
Yes,
mail?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so it was sent out around 8:56. That's when most people would have received it.
Wow, 702 is the latest thing I received. And the one before that is 605.
Yeah, check your spam folder.
No, it's not going to be spam. Just takes a long time in this dumb computer. Um,
All right, let's wait and see how that goes for you while I address whatever questions or comments that Condra and Abby have. Condra, go ahead.
So I have another question.
Oh, yes.
Hank and I are using the same email address. But I know I used a different one. You did, okay. Yeah. Okay. So that I could get mine, but you haven't gotten yours yet. No.
All right. Yeah, so this is challenging, right? This kind of problem is a reason why we may encounter situations where we need to extend a voting period or where we need to accept someone's vote over the phone. If we do accept anybody's vote over the phone, it will be the entire voting support team listening to that vote to ensure that there are no questions about whether we were authorized, that to ensure that you don't think that we somehow were sneaking somebody's vote into the system, or sneaking one of our own votes more than once into the system. So we will be sure to get a phone number out there to you in a meeting announcement. I assume we'll send out a meeting announcement tomorrow.
Is it possible that you don't have Betty's email?
It's not possible that I don't have Betty's email, because it's the same email that was used last year and the year before for Hank to vote. So I'm sure that we've got it. Yeah, Condra.
Good evening. So I guess I'm wondering, with all of these questions about people being able to access or have internet access and some difficulties accessing the ballot, why would it not be easier to have a single ballot? I get that there are multiple issues, but to be able to ensure that everybody has access to the issues that are to be voted on.
Yeah, Condra, I so wish we could do that. Sorry.
So I guess why could you not do that?
Okay, so the reason why we couldn't just use one ballot this year was because the outcome of some of the ballot issues affects the things that come after them. So as an example, there is a motion on the ballot to postpone some of the matters of business to a later assembly. And obviously those, like the postponement, the question of whether we're going to postpone has to be resolved before we conduct
Betty
those
just
matters.
got the thing, but it just
Great.
came in.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad it was received. But
I
that's
don't know
not the
whether it'll
only.
be received within 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that's not the only type of issue that might be that where we might need to know. As another example, we need to know before we vote on the bylaws amendments whether or not Bergen's proposal was the one that was passed, because Bergen's proposal relies upon a bylaws amendment being enacted. And if Bergen's proposal isn't chosen, then people might want to make a different decision about that bylaws amendment. And if Bergen's proposal is chosen, that might influence how they would vote on that particular issue. So, Condra, does that clear it up?
Well, no, I mean, because you don't really leave open the possibility that people might like Bergen's proposal, but not be in favor of changing the complement of the board, right?
Well,
I guess you're sort of seeing it as things that connecting them that don't necessarily have to be connected. So making the process less flexible.
Well,
but I mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
answered the question, but it still
Yeah,
doesn't.
Kendra, I'm not suggesting that people would necessarily vote a particular way on the bylaws amendment based on the outcome. I'm saying that people's decision about how to vote on the bylaws amendment might be affected by the outcome of the previous thing, right? It's possible that if Bergen's proposal passed, some people might be more inclined to vote for that bylaws amendment and other people might be less inclined to vote for it. I'm not making a judgment about that. All right, Abby.
I was just wondering, in the case of there being an internet outage or some other thing that prevents a particular delegate from voting, is it possible for their vote to be assigned to another delegate in their delegation? For instance, the lead delegate on the fly, or is that too hard?
We could probably do that. Yeah. So that's one of the benefits of being able to, of having a reserve pool of some blank lines. What we can do is we can spoil the ballot of the person who is not able to vote, and then we can add an additional vote for the person who would be taking their place. And that would be something we'd need to hear about from the lead delegate.
From the lead delegate.
Yeah, because the lead delegate is the head of their delegation. So they're the folks who are making the decision about those kinds of matters. Yeah. Changes in their delegation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Vandra.
I'm just responding to the issue about the bylaws and the ones put forward by Bergen. I thought that Bergen was submitting two events. One, its proposal, and the other, the bylaw amendments.
That's
I
right.
thought they're being voted on separately, aren't they?
Yeah, they are being voted on separately. Yes.
So I don't know that the link to that that link has to come first.
So
as you were just explaining to Kendra how the voting on the Bergen proposal needs to come ahead of the bylaws.
Right. I mean,
I thought the bylaws are just going to be by themselves.
Well, I mean, certainly some individuals might want to vote for or against Bergen's bylaws amendment, regardless of the outcome. They may have a decision about it that has nothing to do with the whole proposal that Bergen has. Absolutely. But some people's vote may be impacted by the outcome of the scenario. Carolyn is doing her best with advice from other people, including the voting support team and the mediation and law committee, to sequence the items on the agenda in the way that makes the most sense and that is most likely to lead to the outcome that is desired by the delegates. I hope we can all, I hope that we can all, breathe a little bit and hope that that this work that is being done in, in a spirit of trying to be helpful to the entire assembly in making these decisions. Yes, Abby, you had something else?
No, I just forgot to lower my hand.
You forgot to lower your hand. All right. We spent enough time on this. Let's close the voting on this so that you can all see how it works out. So I'm going to go ahead and end the voting. So now that I've ended the voting, the results are going to be calculated, And I'm going to share the link with all of you in the chat. So this is the kind of information that will be available to you about the results of any of these things, of anything that we vote on. Let me just bring up that link on my own screen and share it and share my screen so that you can all see it. All right, so this is what the results would look like for you. You would be able to see that that in choosing the food for our party, after the first round, deli sandwiches had a lot of popularity, but they had not reached 50% of the vote. So therefore, the thing with the lowest number of votes, no change, was eliminated from consideration. Then the next thing that happened was that fried chicken got eliminated because it had the next least number of first place votes. After no change got eliminated. And then finally, after eliminating fried chicken, then deli sandwiches won. In this case, deli sandwiches was the most popular thing all along, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case with this kind of vote. And then for our board members, we elected all of them. There were some people who abstained. For our president, we elected Charlie Chaplin. And for our vice president, we did not elect the vice president did not get more than 50% of the vote. Now, this is exactly the situation where the voting support team would override this decision, right? So when we sent out a report, we would say that our bylaws don't specify that you have to achieve a certain level of popularity in order to win an uncontested officer election. And so therefore, even though only 19 people or 42% voted in favor of Mickey Mouse for vice president, Mickey Mouse still wins because our bylaws don't specify a threshold. They just say that the candidate with the most votes wins. So this is actually a perfect example of an occasion where the voting support team would override the results on the election buddy in order to comply with our bylaws. Are there any questions about this? And of course, you'll be able to, you can go ahead and continue to look at these different tabs, and you'll notice there's a voter audit tab. You will have received an email with your confirmation code, and this allows you to check and make sure that that your vote actually was received. It of course doesn't say what your vote was, because if it said what your vote was, then I'd be able to tell what your vote was. And you don't want anybody else knowing what your vote was. So are there any questions about what the results will look like?
I'm curious about the Charlie Chaplin having won. Do we have any requirement that a person must be alive?
Thank you. I did choose deceased individuals for this, and like I said, it was a demo.
But you can have a dead. I mean, your candidate must be living, right?
Yes, our real candidates do need to be living. Okay. Yes, I absolutely agree. Yes, Fred.
So there's a link in the chat to show us the actual online voting info with the different tabs we could look at. Is that going to be available to us after every vote, or are we just going to find out from a report that you send later?
You're going to find out from the report that's sent later. Do you have concerns about that?
Not really. I just wanted to know, I would love to see the information, just out of curiosity. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, because there are situations like this where the results shown by Election Buddy are not the actual results, like in the case of Mickey Mouse for vice president. It's pretty important that the voting support team be able to review the results and make sure that they comply with our rules. Yeah. All right. We're definitely not trying to hide anything from you. All right. So at this point, it is 9:23 at night. And since it is 9:23 at night, instead of showing you some of the actual ballots to the best of our knowledge of how the ballots will currently look, at this moment, I'd like to move over to let Carolyn talk a little bit about the agenda. I'll be happy to show people actual ballots after Carolyn has a chance to talk. So I'm not going to abandon you and not let you see whatever you might want to see.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you for the wonderful explanations you've given us so far. I know there's more to come. If I could share my screen, I will show what I have for the agenda, the latest draft, and I will also put in the chat the link to this document, which is not yet posted on the delegate website, but I'll try now to share the screen.
Anybody can share their screen, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think that gets it for us. And I've narrowed my screen as well. This is the document. We have, it's 4 pages long. It has times listed in parentheses, not on the clock, but how many minutes we have to spend for each moment that we're working. We have quite a bit of introductory material, partly because we need to establish a quorum. And as you come online, the secretary will be checking the list of who's here so that we can tally up and assure that we do have a quorum of society delegates. And it took 30 minutes or 20, it took almost 30 minutes last year to get a quorum. We're ready to start work about 15 minutes into the meeting. So that's our first bit. Try to get there early if you can. Exigent circumstances, problems do crop up, but pack your lunch, bring your drinks, and come in as soon as you can. 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, and count backwards as you go west. I won't be facetious about how early it'll be in the morning, but bless your hearts for coming anyway at that time. We will be doing, when we adopt the agenda, the same thing that we do several times throughout here. When there is an amendment to something that we've already posted for you, the deadline of June 30th put materials up on the delegate website. And since then, there have been some changes, including changes to the agenda, mostly in terms of reordering and adding links and improving things somewhat. The delegates have to consent to the alternative, to the amended version. So I will be asking you if there's any objection to substituting the revised agenda for the original agenda that was posted on the delegate website. We think this should be a fairly innocuous decision, and we're going to ask you to raise your hand. And when you see this little hand signal, that's your Zoom hand. It's not a wave, it's not a heart, it's not any other emoji. It is only the Zoom hand. So it's really important to practice as much as you can. Yes, there you go. Jackie wins. Thank you so much, Joy. That's your Zoom hand saying that you, now, I'm going to tell you what to do with that Zoom hand. Most of the time, it's actually going to be to object. So maybe not so often if you can possibly not put it up. But we're first going to say, if there's an objection, put your Zoom hand up, and then everybody put their hands down. And then do we vote to approve the agenda as revised? Are we accepting it? And that's a positive. So mostly we're going to be opposing, but sometimes we're going to be supporting. And I'm going to try to tell you just as clearly as I can when you raise your hand what it's going to be signaling. We don't have many of these, but there's some. It saves ballot time, and it hopefully saves a little bit of discussion time. So we're thinking these are simple enough. We have also some withdrawn motions. We can't take them off without your permission. So we're going to ask, are there any objections to withdrawing? And we'll probably actually make a motion to firmly withdraw these items from the agenda. And then there are other things that affect what happens later. For example, this motion about a second assembly, we've put it toward the top. We can't predict what other things will happen later, but this is going to affect some of the things that are on the agenda. So we put it there so we will know what will happen. Then we will have these moments where we pause for voting. And that's estimated at 10 minutes. Could take longer. We hope it doesn't, because you've noticed we've been adding up time, 9 minutes here, and we're almost at an hour on the first page. So as we move through, every minute we save is going to be good, but we'll allow whatever time we need to get the voting done. Hopefully these will be fairly simple, and as a good practice ballot, we'll get through that. And then we come to the scenario resolutions. There have been some amendments, and we're going to have to agree that we will accept the amendments that were made by the makers. Susquehanna Valley, for example, submitted a resolution and then revised it. Do we accept that revision? Okay, if there are no objections, we'll be good. We'll take the revised version. But Northern Virginia has proposed some amendments to that original version. So we have to vote on that separately as well. Each of these things will be explained as we go through. When we get there, we're also going to be able to talk about these things. Every time we've got something like this on the agenda, we have, even if I think withdrawn motions is simple, we still can talk about it if we need to. So if you're in favor of this, you can speak. If you're opposed to this, you can speak. But the rules say you only get 90 seconds. And let me just explain to you about that 90 seconds. It goes really fast. So it might be worth spending some time on the agenda to see if there's something you really passionately need to say about any of these things, and maybe practice a little bit. It's only just 2 or 3 sentences. And I will tell you that 2 or 3 years ago, I had something really, really, really important to say. And I stood up, virtually in assembly, and started saying my piece, and they cut off my microphone. And it made me very sad. And it's taken me a long time to get over it, but I understand why they did it. And I'll do it to you too. I mean, sorry, somebody will do it as well. 90 seconds is how long you get to say what you want to say, for a total of 9 minutes. That's 6 speakers. I did the math. So 1 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 in favor, 1 opposed. If 1 in favor and there's no opposed, that's the end of the discussion according to our rules. So that might be a little bit of time, but I'm just letting you know, check those 2023 Assembly discussion and voting process document. It's on the website, and we sent it out to you.
Just for your information, there's a couple of hands up.
Okay, yes, I was trying to finish that thought and then go on, but I'm working on it. Thank you for that. I'm almost finished now. So timing is going to be part of, there's 9 minutes allowed for this discussion, but only 90 seconds. So again, working on your timings for that discussion time. Okay, now Abby has her hand up.
Yeah, so I read through the voting procedures, and there was one situation with amendments to the motions, any of the motions, that I was confused about. Yes. So it is clear to me that if there is no objection to accepting the amendment, then the ballot pertaining to whatever that motion is will not include the original version.
Right.
However, it was less clear to me if there was an objection and we have a vote about accepting the amendment, if that vote passes, if the vote fails, clearly both of them are on the ballot. If the vote passes, is only the amended version on the ballot?
I think the original is also there, Sonia, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's a distinction, Abby, between what is a friendly amendment accepted by the maker and what is not an unfriendly amendment, but something that is not being automatically accepted by the maker. That's just a different viewpoint of how to deal with it. And my understanding is that both of those are on the ballot as ranked
Yeah.
choices. Sonia's looking at me now.
Yes. Yeah. So Abby, if basically if anyone at all objects to allowing the amendments to go forward, the friendly amendments to go forward, both the original and the amended version will be on the final ballot.
Okay, so if that's the case, what is the meaning? Thank you for the clarity of that answer. If that's the case, then what is the meaning of the vote to accept the amendments? I guess if we don't accept the amendments, then only the original version is on the ballot. Yeah, I mean, in other words, how does that vote matter? You know what I'm saying?
So Abby, there is no vote on whether to accept the amendments or not.
We were trying just to get objections to go with the
Got it. All right, that makes everything clear. Thank you. I thought I read in the assembly procedures that there was, but I must have misunderstood. Excellent. I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, good. Thank you. Okay. And Lee, you have a question?
It's probably real simple. We can abstain from any of them. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, that's it.
You can vote no on any of them.
Okay.
Or rank them, however you decide. Whatever work. There's a question in the chat from Anya Overman about the order of the scenarios. The scenarios were placed in the order that they were received for posting on June 30th. That's all. Is there any other? Okay. Let me see if there's what else I need to tell you about. After the scenarios will be voted on separately, so that's what we're working on at that point. And I believe we have another question. Rachel, what's your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up from that. It seems to me that the Brooklyn scenario should probably be before the West motion for a second assembly, because if the Brooklyn scenario passes, West would withdraw their motion, as I understood that, but I could be wrong.
We did look at those possibilities, but there were enough conflicting, opposing perspectives in what the various resolutions and motions might do. This seemed to follow the clearest path, because West did put a provision that they would that their motion would not go into effect if the Brooklyn scenario was passed. But the Brooklyn scenario is with all of the other scenarios. We didn't pull it out separately because that didn't seem fair. The other scenarios.
But here's the thing, Carolyn. If the Brooklyn, okay, sorry, I have to mute somebody. Somebody mute yourselves. I don't know who you are. I'll do it. If the Brooklyn, I muted the wrong person. If the Brooklyn scenario passes, then
something else.
okay, I think I got whoever it was. Sorry. I understand the complications. I just need a more clear explanation, because the Brooklyn scenario actually postpones for 4 months, but but the elections for officers and directors happens. So if the West scenario is to be voted on and it passes, then the Brooklyn scenario actually becomes moot point.
We are not voting on each scenario separately. We are voting on them by ranked choice. So all of the scenarios will be in one ballot, and we choose the one that is preferred.
But Brooklyn's kicked out by virtue if Wes's motion comes in first. Because Brooklyn,
Rachel, I can say on behalf of the West delegation, that was not our intention. Our intention.
it doesn't matter, Abby. It doesn't matter what the intention is.
It's not stated that way. It just says that their motion will not go into effect if Brooklyn passes. But because their motion affects later items on the agenda, we put it early so that we could get that, at least let the people who are responsible for setting up the ballots and keeping voting going could also have time to work on their part of the process. This was partly logistical, and it also made rational sense at the time. Keeping the scenarios together allows all of them to be considered together and ranked. And that's the only motivation for the order there. John?
Yes, excuse me, I'm looking at the agenda, the draft agenda, preliminary agenda, and I see that the decisions regarding the agenda is in Roman numeral 7, which is distinct from resolutions, which is Roman numeral 9. So I was wondering.
I'm missing an 8. Sorry, I miscounted. This got moved around a lot. Sorry. You're saying number 7 is approval of the minutes?
No, 7 says decisions regarding the agenda. I guess I'm looking at what's on the delegate website.
Okay, that's not the current version. What I have on the screen is the current version. I sent you the link in chat. We've been working to modify what was posted on the delegate website.
So the delegate website previously had a cluster of motions that were distinct from the scenario motions.
Right.
Are you now putting them all into one large hopper?
No, they are separate. I missed it looks like when I copied this that I've misnumbered. Oh, here's 8 down here below 10. Sorry for the numbering problem. I was shifting back and forth between windows. These are part of that cluster of withdrawing the Washington Ethical Society motions on various points and considering the Washington Ethical Society's motion for implementing the petition for a second assembly, clearing up some of the questions that were.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out my confusion. So Roman numeral 8, is that part of a ranked choice vote, or is it a standalone?
No, it's a separate vote. It's going to be a vote by ballot. Right there.
All right.
It will
Thanks
be
for
on
the
a ballot.
Thanks for the clarification.
Sorry, and I apologize for the misnumbering. We did this late this afternoon to get it back in there.
Could I make a suggestion about this, since there seems to be some disagreement about the best sequencing of these items on the agenda to best reflect the will of the assembly? This might be a situation that we should ask the parliamentarian to weigh in on, to assist us in order to avoid this kind of ongoing disagreement.
It would be helpful tremendously. Yeah. And
yeah, so why don't
meet Mr.
So
Anderson.
Carolyn, why don't you do that tomorrow, because he has left the meeting by now. So
yes, looking forward to that one. Hi Steve, we'll meet. Okay, all right, if there's no, let's see, moving on. There is some question if the West motion to implement the second assembly happens, it does have the ability to affect the postponement of the election of directors and officers, and also the approval of the budget, to delay it to a special assembly on September 23rd. So we will have had that vote, and we'll know by the time we get to this part of the agenda whether that motion will have passed and whether we need this section for balloting. It's a separate section, a separate ballot, and we will not need either the discussions or the voting time if the West motion passes. If it does, we've allowed for the full time for what needs to be done for both of those. And then we come, I believe, to the last section of the agenda, which has to do with bylaws. We reviewed the Bergen proposal and determined that it is actually one proposal, not two separate bylaws amendments. And so we've merged them together. So there'll only be one discussion and vote on the proposals from Bergen. Wes, however, had three separate bylaws amendments, and those will each be discussed and presented separately. And they will be on a ballot. This will not, however, be a ranked choice ballot, I believe. It will be one where you will vote yes or no, correct, Sonia? Okay, good, got that.
That's right. There's nothing to rank here.
Good. And we have a pause for voting, and then we'll come to the end. And let me just say, I'm very pleased and proud that for opening words, our newest ethical clergy leader, Gregory Bonin, will be providing us with those opening words. And our next newest, Christian Hayden, will be providing our closing words for us. And then we'll adjourn. Whether or not it's to a determined date or an indeterminate date depends on the votes that went before. But by and large, we've tried to make sure that all of these links go to the very latest document. Some of them have red lines in them, and there is some grumpiness about red lines, but they do tell you what has been deleted and what has been added so that you can make your decision about any amendments that are there. And that, I think that, let's see. Okay, Sarah.
Thanks, Carolyn. I'm just wondering whether the submitting societies should plan to present their motions and scenarios, or whether we just sit back and
No, do not sit back. No, there's work to be done.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, should we have prepared comments to present the motions?
Not, well, there won't be time to present. In the sense that we've been doing presentations. We've had 3 discussion meetings and many others, fishbowls and other times to talk about this. So what will happen is that I will call up the consensus plan resolution, and I will give a 1 or 2 line summary of that, and I probably should check it with everybody, make sure I'm giving an accurate representation to say this is the consensus, and oops, we had an original plan and we've had a revised plan. Is there any objection to replacing the original plan with a revised plan? Hoping that, or well, not just whatever happens, if there's no objection, then we will there is a motion to have got too many screens up.
Well, Carolyn, maybe I think I understand all that, but it sounds like it's not the case that you're gonna like call on me and say, can you like introduce
No.
a motion?
Yes, I will. That's where I was trying to get. Here's the motion, and I would say, I would expect or hope that it would be easy enough for Wes to make this motion. So I would call, Wes, will you make this motion? And then is there a second? And who will speak in favor of this scenario? And I would assume that your hand would be up and you would want to be ready to do that. Or you would have at least 3 speakers lined up able to do that.
And what does speaking in favor of it entail? Just like a brief comment about it?
90 seconds.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's the high point. Here's the advantage. It's really whatever it is that you want to say. The same token, here's speak in favor. Is there anyone to speak against? And someone may speak against it. If they do, they have this 90 seconds, and then we'll go back again to someone speaking in favor. If we run out of speakers against, we also will just stop the time. Sorry, I didn't get all that in there. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that covers it. If not, I know there's one, I made this note. Perseverance really matters. Yvonne sorry, I don't want to embarrass you, but Yvonne asked me a question on Monday and it got lost in my emails and I didn't answer it. And today she sent me another email. I'm just following up on it. Do not fail. If you have a question, send it. If I don't answer it fast enough, send me another one. We'll get to it, because we want to make sure that it's clear and easy-ish. Thanks. Lee.
Yes. Are you saying there's no limit to the amount of people that can get up and speak for it? I mean, I understand there's
90 seconds for
90 seconds, but if you could potentially have 5 or 6 people speak for and against this thing.
The 9 minutes
one
allows about 3 for and 3 against. That's it. There's no more time.
That's what I mean. So you have a limit of 3 for and 3 against.
Yes, or if there's 3 for and 1 against, it's just 1 for and 1 against.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other? Thank you. Sonia.
All right. So Anya asked, when is this going to be over? Or Anya asked, sorry, when is this scheduled to be over? And I said, well, we had hoped it would take an hour and a half, but obviously that didn't happen. I think we've concluded all of the real business that we had here. You know, I will be happy to stick around and answer any additional questions that may arise. Chris and Bill, are you available to stick around, 15 more minutes and answer any additional questions that come up?
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10. Yeah, it's pretty late, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, Sanjay. I wanted to know whether you had to register that you're going to be for or against in this the debate or the resolutions.
So Carolyn, can you address how you're planning to handle that?
Sorry, I was trying to follow the question.
Sorry, Carolyn, when there's this 9-minute period for debating an order of business, how will people indicate whether they're for or against the motion or whatever?
Question, because it's not terribly clear in what Zoom allows. And I am probably going to try to check back of how it was handled last year. But also, I need a timekeeper. So that may be some help as well. And I've been asking individuals for help, but I see that Judy and Abby thought they might be helpful in some other things. So I may be contacting them tomorrow as well to see if they can help on any of this. But
Carolyn,
I'm not certain how we register that. I've just will be asking who's for and who's against.
I think
don't we have a professional staff to do this work rather than volunteers? I mean, we still have to keep the integrity of the
I think Rachel's going to be busy with running the Zoom session, and so there's only so many things one person can do at a time.
I'm sorry, Carolyn, running a Zoom session once everybody is on is minimal work. It's funny.
Well, we do have the need to set up that breakout room and a few other things. So fine, we'll work on it.
It says in the the discussion and voting procedures that at the beginning of the time period, a list of persons interested in speaking for and against will be determined. The way that was handled in the past was that the presiding officer, that would be Carolyn, asked, please raise your hand if you're interested in speaking in favor of this order of business. Then those were noted down, and then, okay, everybody lowers their hand, and then please raise your hand if you're interested in speaking against this. And those are also noted down. And then they get alternated between. It would be super helpful to Carolyn, I'm sure, if there were someone who was doing that job of noting this down. This would be a kind of thing that a secretary might be doing, or I'm sure Carolyn will find another person to do it, whether that's a staff member or a volunteer.
Yeah, we're still working that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's another reason why practicing that Zoom hand becomes really important. Yes. Thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody want to see a ballot that we've been working on?
Yes, please.
All right. And like I said, this is the formal meeting is concluded, so feel free to leave if there nothing really important is going to get discussed from this point onward. Let me pull up the election buddy system.
Thank you, Sonia. This
So-
is really terrific.
So Rachel can stop the recording.